lot of actors were ducking him because he's like a prize fighter that fighters don't want to fight. You know what I'm saying? Don't let the baby face fool you. You know what I'm saying? Don't be, lulled into a false sense of security by the kind eyes. The man is a monster. He's a boogeyman. Actors have bad dreams about this guy, right?
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Den of Geek Studio at South by Southwest. We are here with the folks behind the Apple TV Plus series, Government Cheese. And now this is a very vivid, creative television show, and I'm going to open up with, I guess, what is probably a fairly boring, unimaginative question, but I think an important one. Paul and Ayesha, could you tell me, where did this idea come from? How did this come about?
Well, it started with the inspiration from my family growing up, my dad in particular, who was really a charismatic guy and would tell a lot of stories. He had a really interesting just point of view. Whenever his back was up against the wall, he'd have a funny way of looking at things in a positive way. And we were just kind of in our own bubble as a group. Family group, and so I just thought, man, it'd be interesting to go down that path.
I have always said that dads are a real untapped market for TV show concepts. And for both of you again, if you could tell me a little bit about the name Government Cheese, because it's kind of a fascinating, outdated concept.
Yes, it is. It had a very specific meaning in the 70s, and we've kind of taken it now to more of a state of mind of taking something that seemingly nothing and making it into something amazing. And I think that's kind of what is the core of the show, is taking whatever you have and making it into something so much greater than anyone else could ever imagine.
David, I wanted to ask you, so this project is set in the late 60s, and a lot of it is fairly earthbound and logical, but there are some elements of some magically realistic elements incorporated in there. As a performer, what is it like kind of balancing the mundane with the fantastical in that way?
Well, it's a hell of a lot of fun. I mean, as someone who, yes, I live a very grounded life, but I have a very vivid imagination. I also have a spiritual life as well. So to have a show that unapologetically looks at all of that, I mean, this guy is constantly having this existential, spiritual, surreal, absurdist conversation with God. And that is manifesting in the visuals you see in the show. Because it's largely through his point of view, these things that are happening that might not be the reality necessarily for everyone else, or maybe they are, is just a really fun way into a character, into a world, into a very quirky family. And I actually think all of our families are far more quirky than maybe we get to see on TV and in film. And so to delve into that, but in the 60s through the lens of a Black family, which is something I personally haven't seen before, was just something that from the moment Paul and I 6 years ago made the short film of this to now, the miraculous event of having it be a 10-part show, that has never abated. That's the joy of having crawled into Paul Hunter's head.
And then Jahi and Evan, I wanted to ask you both, what was it like playing characters in the late 60s? Is that something you had done before? What was costuming like? Did it blow your mind?
It did blow my mind. I think the short shorts and the high socks were definitely definitely a vibe. I liked it. And no, it was really cool stepping into that world. All of our sets and the wardrobe, and then Paul would constantly play music from the 60s while we were shooting different scenes. So it was really no, I've never stepped into that world before, and it was incredible. I liked it a lot, yeah.
Same. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think the cool thing is, specifically with Harrison, is I felt like he could be a teenager in any time period. And I think that's the cool thing about our show, too, is that this family could exist in any time, and you're really just seeing a slice of life from this particular period, and it makes it so much cooler. It elevates it in a really cool way.
Yeah, I mean, those short shorts and those socks.
Yeah, not everyone can pull that off. Not everyone can pull that off.
He definitely pulled it off.
Bokeem, I wanted to ask you, seeing this role in coming to life, felt to me like this was something on the page that Paul and Ayesha were like, we could really use a Bokeem Woodbine type. And lo and behold. Can you tell me a little bit about if you got that sense as well, and what was it like crafting Bootsy?
For me, initially, I turned it down initially because it's like, I got the call from my agent, David and Paul and Ayesha were looking for somebody to play this character, and a lot of actors were ducking him because he's like a prize fighter that fighters don't want to fight. You know what I'm saying? Don't let the baby face fool you. You know what I'm saying? Don't be, lulled into a false sense of security by the kind eyes. The man is a monster. He's a boogeyman. Actors have bad dreams about this guy, right? So I got the call on Thursday that they wanted me to go on set on Monday. And I turned it down sight unseen. I said, no way, with who? Nah, we're not doing that. I was on my way to New York and I read the script on the plane and I fell in love with the character, and I called my agent and I said, man, what a drag, because I would have loved to have done this, but it's just not enough time. And he said, well, guess what? They've decided to give you some time. I said, are you kidding me? Oh my God. So they gave me the time I needed to prepare, and then I got my act together. The thing about Bootsy is, for me, it's not that far of a jump from my own personal viewpoint and real life. The time period's different, this, that, and the other. But he's a free-spirited individual who might be slightly ahead of his time, much like I see myself. You know what I'm saying? So all they did was just slap a wig and some hair on me, and boom, they started rolling the cameras. We were good to go.
I want to ask the Chambers family over here. I think one of the interesting things in the early episodes of this show is the awkward family dynamic as Hampton kind of reintegrates back into the family. What was it like working with that with each other on set? And did you ever have to pull back, we're getting along too much?
Well, I would be remiss in not mentioning the amazing Simone Missick, who's part of the family, the matriarch of the family, who plays Astoria in it. And, she was a huge part of establishing this dynamic, because she has her own secret life, but she's also been the one holding it down while he's been in prison. And so a lot of that quirk, a lot of the awkwardness you're talking about is Hampton, who is like a bull in a china shop, suddenly entering into the house and her having to navigate, the boys having to navigate. He has a very different relationship with Einstein than he does with Harrison. There's a bit of he seems to get along more with Einstein, which of course is going to be a really weird thing with Harrison. And he just expects to be right back into the marital bed once he comes home. That's not happening. All of that is part of the fun, and we did get along immensely. But I personally think the more you get along with the actors you get to play with, the more acrimonious the relationships can be, because there's trust there. So we could really push it. It was an incredibly creative, inventive set, and that's partly to do with the trust that we had all established between each other. So, and hopefully people are going to watch the show and be able to relate to that, because let's be honest, there's a lot of dysfunction in a lot of families.
Paul and Ayesha, I got to say, Hampton has sold me on the self-sharpening drill bit. I think it's a great idea. I think we need to do it right now. It should be in the Apple TV Plus store tomorrow. What was it like coming up with that idea as Hampton's harebrained scheme? And did you go through any other iterations of kind of weird dad ideas?
There was plenty of weird dad ideas. Before I started filmmaking, I used to work in, I used to sell cutting tools and in aerospace. So I had a lot of experience, just going around the different companies. And so that's where the idea came from.
Has anybody gotten around to making a self-sharpening drill bit?
I don't know. Yeah, the one thing that just what, Ayesha, what she brought to it, she really wanted to make it clear, the function and how it would work in the story. So that was really important. It was also a big part of the journey of Hampton and being in, we shot in Chatsworth, which during that time period, there's a lot of companies, that community was built, on all the aerospace out there. So it really worked for Hampton's character.
David, talking about like Hampton's journey a bit here, I believe you've said previously that you felt called upon by God for Selma. I'm wondering if that experience informed how you identified with Hampton in this series, who feels very specifically called upon by God to do great and medium things.
Well, firstly, it is so rare to get a truly original question doing press for a show. So thank you for that. Yes, it did. It is definitely one of the things that drew me to this, because I personally, as a man, have a very personal, specific, and vocal relationship with God, and you know, as was the case with what you just mentioned with Selma, there is an ongoing dialogue. So I relate to this entirely. So the idea of having a show that depicts a relationship with God, but with a character who is incredibly flawed, incredibly relatable, someone who I think all of us, regardless of our religious practice, can understand and relate to the idea of wanting to be better, but constantly failing at doing that. And so to do that in a fun way, in a relatable way, in a surreal way, in a way that involves a family, in a way that has really understandable elements. You know, you're trying to be the best you can be for your wife, for your kids. You've had a past that is one that you want to come away from, but your past keeps dragging you back towards it. These are all incredibly relatable themes. And so to play that in a front-footed way that is not apologizing for the spiritual components of that, but actually it's leaned into because there are visual depictions of that. I mean, this guy literally steps into what feel like depictions of biblical parables and stories and visuals that you'll recognize from religious iconography. So yeah, it's something that regardless of what your faith journey is, I think that the relatable component is the imagination and the internal life being seen so vibrantly in a visual setting.
You know, we've been on a journey together in this interview, but I started in kind of a vague, boring fashion, and I will be damned if I don't finish it in a vague, boring fashion as well. So just to kind of send you guys off, for everyone, what are you most excited for people to see once this premieres? Just speaking generally or specifically, up to you.
In the creation of this, and when we were building out the show and all of these great ideas from Paul, and I was like, is any of this shootable? Like, can we really do all of these things? And he's like, yes. And he comes from it of nothing is impossible. And I think in every one of the actors and every one of the characters, they're all on a journey for something that seems impossible. And it all is attainable. And I think that's what the beauty of the show is to go after your dreams with wild abandon.
And I'll just very quickly say, to add to that, it is such a creative, inventive, and I think visually arresting show, to the point whereby Paul showed some footage to his very good friend Pharrell Williams. And Pharrell watched it, immediately left the room, which Paul got very nervous about, went upstairs and started making music for the show. And that's how we have him in the main title credits. So, you know, that kind of cosign and that kind of invention that I think is in the show, and that kind of validation is something that we're also hoping the audience see as well.
Like Ayesha said, I think you're going to see people not settling with the cards that they were dealt with. And I think that it's inspiring, and I think people will see themselves in it and kind of take that into their own lives. And I hope it inspires them to not settle. So, yeah.
Our show is a personification that blackness is not a monolith. Like, there is no one experience that generalizes an entire people. Like, this is going to be a really beautiful way to show people that, you know, there's a variety of experiences. And I really don't think there's been a family like ours from this time period with these characters. And like David was saying, to show, you know, the idiosyncrasies of our people that look like us. And I'm really excited for people to see that. I think it's going to be really revolutionary in that sense.
Yeah, I would second that. I would say that generally speaking, during this time period that's depicted in our show, it's usually something that has to do with the civil rights struggle, and those are valid stories that need to be told. But a lot of people don't know, quite frankly, that there were black folks on the West Coast. You know what I mean? If all you reference are the film and television stories that have come before this one, but there was thriving black communities on the West Coast, and you know there are more stories to be told that have to do with this time period than just you know the valiant struggle of the civil rights movement, and this is the first time we're seeing that, I think, as an audience, that there was a whole other world and lifestyle and stories to be told going on during that period, and we've never addressed it heretofore. So this is very exciting to be a part of.
Thank you, everybody. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then consider me dangerous.